The hammer struck the anvil with a rhythm older than the stars themselves. Each blow sent sparks dancing through the dim workshop, illuminating the weathered face of Marcus Chun, the last human smith in the known galaxy. His calloused hands moved with practiced precision, shaping a piece of crystalline metal that most beings would consider impossible to work with. At 93 standard years, Marcus had outlived 3 generations of alien apprentices, yet his eyes still burned with the fire of creation. The workshop itself was a testament to human ingenuity and stubbornness. Built into the hull of an ancient Earth transport ship that had been grounded on the mining planet Kepler 438b for over 60 years, it housed tools and techniques that predated faster-than-light travel. While the galaxy had moved on to quantum forges and molecular assemblers, Marcus still believed in the power of fire, metal, and the human touch. Outside his reinforced windows, the red dwarf star cast its perpetual twilight across the crystalline mountains of Kepler 438b. The planet was rich in exotic minerals that made it valuable to the Galactic Trade Consortium, but its harsh environment and unstable core made it unsuitable for most forms of life. Only the mining operations remained, staffed by hardy species like the silicon-based Vorthak and the radiation-resistant Zephyrians. Marcus paused in his work, wiping sweat from his brow with a cloth that had seen better decades. The piece he was crafting was special, commissioned by a contact he had never met in person. The message had come through encrypted channels, offering payment in rare earth elements that could keep his workshop running for years. All he had to do was forge a specific alloy, following blueprints that seemed to blend ancient metallurgy with technologies he barely understood. The workshop door chimed softly, its magnetic locks disengaging with a subtle hiss. Marcus looked up, expecting to see one of his regular customers, perhaps Grex the Vorthak trader who brought him raw materials, or Dr. Keelan, the human xenobiologist who occasionally needed specialized equipment for her research. Instead, he found himself staring at the most beautiful being he had ever encountered. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her form humanoid, but clearly not human. Her skin seemed to be crafted from living silver, reflecting the workshop's firelight in patterns that shifted like liquid mercury. What appeared to be hair cascaded down her shoulders in threads of pure platinum, and when she moved, Marcus caught glimpses of scales so fine they might have been etched by the gods themselves. Her eyes were the most striking feature of all, burning with an inner light that reminded him of molten gold. "Master Chun," she spoke, and her voice carried harmonics that made the metal tools in his workshop vibrate sympathetically. "I am Lyralii of the Draconic Imperium. I believe you have something that belongs to me." Marcus set down his hammer carefully, his mind racing. The Draconic Imperium was legend, a civilization so ancient and powerful that most species considered them myths. According to the stories, they had ruled the galaxy before the current galactic government existed, beings of such technological and mystical prowess that they had transcended the need for physical empire. If this creature truly was one of them, then the commission he had been working on suddenly made much more sense. "The alloy," Marcus said, gesturing toward his workbench where the partially completed piece rested. "You're the one who commissioned it." Lyralii stepped forward, and Marcus noticed that her feet barely made a sound on the metal floor. Each step seemed calculated, graceful in a way that spoke of centuries of practice. "Indeed, though I confess, I did not expect to find the work being performed by human hands. Your species is young. I was not aware that any of your kind possessed the knowledge necessary for such a delicate operation." There was no condescension in her voice, merely curiosity. Marcus had dealt with enough alien species to recognize when he was being looked down upon, and this wasn't that. If anything, she seemed genuinely intrigued by his presence. "My grandfather taught me," Marcus replied, moving to stand between Lyralii and his workbench, not out of fear, but out of professional pride. He learned from his grandfather, who learned from the first smiths to leave Earth. "We've been working metal for thousands of years, long before we knew other species existed." "Fascinating," Laurelii murmured, her golden eyes studying him with an intensity that made Marcus feel like a specimen under a microscope. May I examine your work? Marcus hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside. Professional courtesy demanded that he allow his client to inspect the commission, even if that client happened to be a legendary dragon maiden who could probably incinerate him with a thought. Laurelii approached the workbench with something approaching reverence. The partially completed alloy was roughly the size and shape of a human forearm, its surface covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change in the firelight. She extended one elegant hand toward it, stopping just short of making contact. Remarkable, she breathed. The quantum resonance patterns are perfect. The crystalline matrix shows no structural flaws. And the harmonic frequencies. She turned to look at Marcus, and he was surprised to see what looked like admiration in her expression. How did you achieve such precision without quantum-level manufacturing equipment? Marcus felt a surge of pride. Feel, listen, watch. The metal tells you what it wants to be. You just have to know how to hear it. You speak of metallurgy as if it were a living art. Isn't it? Marcus moved to another workbench, picking up a piece of common iron ore. This rock has been waiting millions of years to become something useful. The atoms want to align in certain patterns. They want to form bonds that make them stronger. All I do is help them along. Laurelii watched as Marcus placed the ore in his forge, the flames dancing higher as he worked the bellows. Your species has a saying, does it not? About teaching a man to fish. Give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime. Marcus recited automatically. The Galactic Consortium believes in the fish, Laurelii said softly. They mass-produce everything, distributed across 1,000 worlds, ensure that every species receives exactly what they need to maintain their current level of development. But you still know how to fish. Marcus looked up from his forge, studying the dragon Maiden's expression. And you think that's important? I think it may be the only thing that matters, she replied. Tell me, Master Chun, what do you know of the old wars? The question seemed to come from nowhere, but Marcus had lived long enough to recognize when a conversation was taking a serious turn. He set aside his tools and gave Laurelii his full attention. Which wars? There have been so many. The wars that shaped the galaxy as it exists today. The wars that ended with the formation of the Galactic Consortium and the disappearance of species like mine. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the workshop's temperature. You're talking about the Silence Wars. Laurelii nodded slowly. Few beings remember them by name anymore. The Consortium has done an excellent job of revising history. But yes, the Silence Wars. Do you know why they were called that? Because entire star systems went quiet. Billions of beings just vanished. No distress signals, no evidence of battle. Just silence. And what do your people believe caused this silence? Marcus hesitated. The official consortium history claimed that an unknown alien threat had swept through those systems, something from outside the galaxy that had since moved on. But there had always been rumors, whispered stories passed down through the generations of the first human settlers. Some say it was the consortium itself. Marcus said, quietly, that they eliminated any species that threatened their vision of galactic order. Laurelii's golden eyes flared brighter. And what do you believe, Master Chun? Marcus looked around his workshop at the tools and techniques that represented thousands of years of human development. He thought about the standardized equipment that dominated every other workshop in the galaxy. The mass-produced solutions that made every species dependent on consortium supply chains. I believe, he said slowly, that someone wanted to make sure no one would ever be able to fish for themselves again. Wise words, Laurelii murmured. And now, Master Chun, I must ask you a very important question. The alloy you're crafting for me is more than just a commission. It is a component in something much larger. Something that could change the balance of power in this galaxy. Are you prepared for the consequences of completing this work? Marcus looked down at the partially completed piece, its surface gleaming with an inner light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. He thought about his grandfather, who had taught him that a smith's greatest responsibility was not just to create, but to understand what his creations might become. "What exactly are you asking me to build?" he asked. Lyralii smiled, and for the first time, Marcus caught a glimpse of what might have been fangs. "The key to awakening a sleeping god, Master Chun. The question is whether you have the courage to turn it." Before Marcus could respond, the workshop's proximity alarms began to wail. Red lights flashed along the walls as his security system detected incoming ships. Through the reinforced windows, Marcus could see the distinctive blue engine trails of consortium enforcement vessels descending through the planet's thin atmosphere. "It seems," Lyralii said with disturbing calm, "that we have visitors." Marcus moved to his control panel, bringing up the external cameras. 6 heavy cruisers were setting down around his workshop, their weapon systems already powering up. Squads of armored figures were deploying from the ships, their movements coordinated with military precision. "Consortium security forces," Marcus muttered. "How do they find us?" "They have been watching me for a very long time," Lyralii replied. "I had hoped to retrieve the component before they located me, but it seems I underestimated their surveillance capabilities." A voice boomed across the workshop's external speakers, amplified by the consortium ships. "Attention occupants of the structure. You are harboring a known fugitive from galactic justice. Surrender the criminal designated Lyralia 77 Alpha and submit to processing or face the consequences of obstruction." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. Fugitive from galactic justice? He looked at Lyralii, who seemed utterly unconcerned by the presence of enough firepower to level a small city. "Criminal?" he asked. "The consortium's definition of criminal is rather broad," Lyralii replied. "Anyone who refuses to submit to their authority, anyone who possesses knowledge or technology they consider dangerous, anyone who remembers the galaxy as it was before their rise to power. By their standards, Master Chun, you yourself are probably a criminal." The truth of that statement hit Marcus like a physical blow. His workshop, his techniques, his very existence as an independent craftsman represented everything the consortium sought to eliminate. He was a relic of humanity's past, a reminder that there had once been other ways of living, other ways of creating. "What do you need from me?" he asked. Lyralii's expression shifted, and Marcus caught a glimpse of something ancient and terrible in her golden eyes. "I need you to finish the alloy, and I need you to trust that what we are about to do will echo across the stars for generations to come." Outside, the consortium forces were setting up perimeter positions. Marcus could see energy shields flickering to life, heavy weapons being deployed. They weren't taking any chances. "The workshop's shields will hold for a while," Marcus said, moving back to his forge. "But not forever. How long do you need?" "Less time than you might think," Lyralii replied. "But first, I need you to understand something important. The component you're creating, it is not just a key. It is a seed. A seed for what? For change, Master Chun. For evolution. For the return of something the consortium thought they had destroyed forever." Lyralii moved to the workshop's central power coupling, placing her silver hands against the metal conduits. "Your species has a gift, though you may not recognize it as such. You adapt. You survive. You find ways to thrive in environments that would kill other beings. And, most importantly, you never forget how to create something from nothing." Energy began to flow from Lyralii's hands into the workshop systems. The forge flames burned higher, the lights grew brighter, and Marcus felt the very air around him crackling with potential. "The consortium fears that gift," she continued. "They have spent centuries trying to suppress it, to channel it, to control it. But they made one crucial mistake. They allowed your species to spread across the galaxy. They thought that by keeping you dependent on their technology, they could contain your creativity. They were wrong." Marcus watched in amazement as the workshop's equipment began to transform. His simple forge became something that seemed to bend the very laws of physics, flames that burned in colors he had no names for. His anvil resonated with harmonics that made the air itself ring like a bell. "What are you doing to my workshop?" I'm showing it what it was always meant to become, Lyralii replied. Your grandfather's tools, enhanced by knowledge that predates the formation of this galaxy's current civilizations. Human ingenuity wedded to draconic wisdom. Fire and metal and wool given form and purpose. The partially completed alloy began to glow brighter, its surface patterns shifting and evolving as new energies flowed through it. Marcus could feel it calling to him, demanding completion. The consortium ships are charging their main batteries, he observed, glancing at his sensor readings. Let them, Lyralii said. By the time they break through our defenses, we will be long gone. And we will have left them something to remember us by. Marcus picked up his hammer, feeling its weight differently now. The tool seemed alive in his hands, eager to complete the work that had begun. Where are we going? To wake the sleeping gods, Master Chun. To remind the galaxy that there are older powers than the consortium. To show them that the age of enforced mediocrity is coming to an end. The workshop shuddered as the first energy blast struck its shields. Warning lights flashed as power levels fluctuated. But Marcus paid no attention to the chaos outside. All his focus was on the glowing alloy before him, on the rhythm of hammer against metal, on the ancient dance of creation that his people had perfected long before they knew the stars held other dancers. Each strike of the hammer sent waves of energy through the component, activating quantum structures that existed in dimensions beyond normal space. The patterns on its surface became more complex, more beautiful, until Marcus found himself staring at something that seemed to contain entire universes within its crystalline matrix. It's magnificent, he whispered. It is hope, Lyralii replied. It is the first step toward reclaiming what was lost. And it is why the consortium will stop at nothing to destroy us both. The workshop's shields finally buckled under the sustained assault, energy barriers collapsing in showers of sparks. But even as the first consortium soldiers breached the outer walls, Marcus brought his hammer down one final time. The completed component pulsed with light that seemed to come from the heart of creation itself. And in that moment, every piece of consortium technology within 1,000 kilometers simply stopped working. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the sound of Marcus Chen's laughter and the whisper of Lyralii's voice as she began to speak words in a language older than memory itself. The silence stretched across Kepler. For 38 be like a physical presence, broken only by the confused shouts of consortium soldiers whose equipment had suddenly become as useful as decorative sculptures. Marcus stood beside his anvil, the completed components still glowing in his weathered hands, while Lyralii continued speaking in the ancient tongue that seemed to make reality itself bend and listen. Through the breached walls of his workshop, Marcus could see consortium troops stumbling through the crystalline landscape, their powered armor now nothing more than expensive metal coffins. Communication arrays sparked and died, weapons refused to fire, and even the basic life support systems in their environmental suits had gone dark. The 6 heavy cruisers that had landed with such menace now sat silent and powerless, their crews trapped inside hulls that no longer responded to any command. "What did you do?" Marcus asked, though he kept his voice low, unwilling to interrupt whatever ritual Lyralii was performing. "I awakened the sleeping protocols," she replied without breaking the rhythm of her incantations. Every piece of consortium technology contains a hidden subroutine, a failsafe installed by my people during the early days of galactic civilization. We never imagined it would be needed, but we believe in preparation for impossible circumstances. The component in Marcus's hands grew warmer, and he could feel strange energies flowing through its crystalline matrix. The patterns on its surface had become so complex that looking at them directly made his eyes water, as if he were trying to perceive dimensions that human vision wasn't equipped to handle. "Your people built backdoors into consortium tech?" Marcus asked. "That's impossible. The consortium controls all manufacturing, all distribution networks. They would never allow foreign code in their systems." Lyralii's laughter was like music played on silver bells. "Oh," My dear Master Chun, you misunderstand. The consortium didn't build their technology. They simply stole it, rebranded it, and convinced the galaxy that they were the original creators. Every quantum processor, every faster-than-light engine, every artificial gravity generator, all of it based on technologies developed by civilizations that predate their corporate empire by millions of years. The implications of her words hit Marcus like a sledgehammer. The Galactic Trade Consortium, the entity that controlled commerce and communication across 300 star systems, was built on a foundation of technological theft. Everything he had assumed about galactic civilization was wrong. Then, why haven't you used these failsafes before? Why allow the consortium to maintain control for so long? Because activation requires a specific catalyst, Lyralii said, finally completing her incantations. The ancient words faded into silence, leaving only the distant sounds of confusion and panic from the stranded consortium forces. A quantum resonance pattern that can only be achieved through the fusion of draconic energy manipulation and human metallurgical intuition. Your species' unique relationship with matter and energy was the missing component. Marcus looked down at the glowing alloy in his hands with new understanding. This isn't just a key, it's a weapon. It is both, and neither, Lyralii replied. It is possibility made manifest. The question now is what we choose to do with that possibility. A new sound reached them from outside, the distinctive whine of approaching atmospheric engines. But these weren't consortium vessels. The engine signatures were different, older, producing harmonics that seemed to resonate with the component Marcus held. Through the broken walls, Marcus could see shapes descending from the planet's perpetual twilight sky. Ships that looked as if they had been grown rather than built, their hulls flowing in organic curves that seemed to shift and change as he watched. They moved with a grace that no mechanical system should have been capable of, dancing through the atmosphere like living things. The Imperium fleet, Lyralii said with satisfaction. They felt the awakening signal. After centuries of hiding in the space between stars, my people are finally ready to reclaim what was stolen from them. The lead ship, larger than a consortium dreadnought, but somehow more elegant, settled to the ground with barely a whisper of displaced air. Its hull seemed to be composed of the same living silver as Lyralii's skin, and Marcus could see patterns of light flowing beneath its surface like a vast circulatory system. A section of the ship's hull simply flowed open, revealing an interior that glowed with soft, warm light. Figures emerged, each one as tall and graceful as Lyralii, their forms varying in subtle ways that spoke of evolutionary divergence over vast spans of time. Some had scales that gleamed like jewels. Others bore crystalline growths that appeared to be living armor. All of them moved with the same predatory grace, and all of them carried an aura of barely contained power. "Sister," one of them called out, approaching the workshop with fluid steps. This one appeared to be male, his skin a deep bronze color that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His voice carried the same harmonic qualities as Lyralii's, but with undertones that reminded Marcus of distant thunder. The awakening signal was felt across 12 star systems. The consortium response fleets are already mobilizing. "Let them come, Theron," Lyralii replied. "They will find their ships no more functional than these." She gestured toward the silent consortium cruisers. "How many of our people have answered the call?" 17 fleets so far, with more arriving every hour. The hidden worlds are opening their cloaking fields. The sealed archives are being unlocked. After 8 centuries of exile, the Imperium stirs once more. Marcus found himself caught between wonder and terror. These beings, these dragons in humanoid form, spoke of fleets and worlds and archives as if they were discussing the weather. The scale of what was happening began to dawn on him, and he realized that he had become part of something that would reshape the galaxy. "Master Chun," Lyralii said, turning back to him, "I must ask something of you that may seem impossible. Will you come with us?" Come where? To the heart of everything. To the place where this war will be decided. Your work here is magnificent, but it is only the beginning. The component you have created is the first of 7 that must be forged. Each one requires the same fusion of human craftsmanship and draconic knowledge. Each one will awaken more of the sleeping protocols hidden within consortium technology. Marcus looked around his workshop at the tools and techniques that represented his entire life's work. I'm just a smith. I make things out of metal. I don't know anything about galactic politics or ancient wars. You know more than you realize, Theron interjected. Your species has survived and thrived in environments that would have destroyed others. You have maintained your individual cultures and traditions despite centuries of consortium pressure towards standardization. You represent something precious in this galaxy, something that must not be lost. And what's that? Diversity, Lyralii said simply. The consortium preaches unity, but what they actually enforce is uniformity. Every world following the same laws, using the same technologies, thinking the same thoughts. They have created a galaxy of sheep, but sheep cannot innovate, cannot adapt, cannot grow. They can only follow. Marcus thought about the consortium manufacturing standards that had slowly driven independent craftsmen out of business across human space. He remembered the regulations that had made traditional techniques illegal in most systems, the economic pressures that had forced species after species to abandon their unique approaches to problem solving. You're talking about revolution, he said. We are talking about evolution, Theron corrected. The consortium has created a galaxy locked in stasis, but stasis is death. Life requires change, growth, the constant exploration of new possibilities. That is what your component represents. Not just the awakening of our hidden protocols, but the awakening of choice itself. A new alarm began sounding across the plateau, this one coming from the consortium ships. Marcus could see emergency lights flashing through their viewports as trapped crews tried desperately to restore power to their vessels. Some of the soldiers had managed to remove their powered armor, but they were now stranded on a hostile world with limited supplies and no way to call for help. What happens to them? Marcus asked, nodding toward the consortium forces. They will be given the same choice as everyone else, Lyralii replied. Join us. Return to their worlds as free beings, or continue to serve a system that sees them as expendable resources. The consortium's greatest weakness is that it has never inspired genuine loyalty, only compliance through fear and dependency. One of the consortium soldiers had managed to approach close enough to hear their conversation. Marcus could see the man's face through the transparent aluminum faceplate of his emergency mask. He was young, probably no older than 30 standard years, with the kind of idealistic expression that suggested he actually believed in what he was fighting for. You're talking about destroying galactic civilization, the soldier called out. The consortium maintains peace across hundreds of worlds. Without central coordination, there would be chaos, war, suffering on an unimaginable scale. Lyralii turned to face the soldier, and Marcus saw her expression soften slightly. What is your name, young warrior? Lieutenant Jake Morrison, Consortium Security Forces, the soldier replied automatically. Tell me, Lieutenant Morrison, how many worlds have you visited in your service to the Consortium? 17, Mom. And in those 17 worlds, how many different forms of art did you encounter? How many unique solutions to the problems of existence? How many ways of understanding the universe? Morrison hesitated. The Consortium Cultural Exchange Program ensures that all citizens have access to approved artistic expressions from across the galaxy. Approved, Lyralii repeated. Standardized, sanitized, reduced to the lowest common denominator so that nothing might offend, nothing might challenge, nothing might inspire someone to think differently. She gestured toward Marcus's workshop with its ancient tools and handcrafted solutions. When did you last see something truly unique, Lieutenant? Something that existed nowhere else in the galaxy? Morrison looked around the workshop and Marcus could see understanding beginning to dawn in his eyes. The consortium manufactures everything we need. There's no reason for local variations. No reason, Theron said softly, except that local variations are how civilizations grow, how they discover new truths, how they solve problems that centralized authorities never even recognized existed. But the chaos, Morrison protested weakly, will be temporary, Lyralii assured him. Pain often accompanies growth. But the alternative is eternal stagnation, a galaxy frozen in time until it finally collapses under the weight of its own rigidity. Marcus found himself studying the young soldier's face, seeing his own doubts and concerns reflected there. "Lieutenant, how long have you been in service?" 8 years, sir. In those 8 years, how many problems has the consortium solved? How many new discoveries has it made? How much has life improved for the average citizen? Morrison opened his mouth to answer, then closed it again. Marcus could see him thinking, really thinking, perhaps for the first time in years. "The stability indices show steady improvement," Morrison said finally, but his voice lacked conviction. "Stability isn't the same as progress," Marcus replied gently. "A corpse is perfectly stable, but it's not alive." Before Morrison could respond, the sky above them began to change. The perpetual twilight of Kepler 438b was pierced by new lights, brilliant points of illumination that grew larger and brighter with each passing moment. Consortium reinforcement fleets, arriving in response to the loss of contact with the surface forces. But as the ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel, something unexpected happened. Instead of maintaining formation and preparing for assault, they began to drift aimlessly through space. Their engine signatures flickered and died, their weapon arrays went dark, and their communication systems fell silent. "The awakening signal is spreading," Lyralii observed with satisfaction. "Every consortium ship that enters this system will find their technology useless. The hidden worlds are sending their own signals now, creating a cascade effect that will eventually reach every corner of consortium space." "You're talking about the collapse of interstellar civilization," Morrison said, his voice hollow with shock. "We are talking about its rebirth," Theron corrected. "The technology will not remain dead forever. But when it awakens again, it will serve its true creators, not the corporate masters who stole it. Each world, each species, each individual will have to choose what kind of future they want to build." Marcus felt the component in his hands pulse with renewed energy, and suddenly he could sense things that his human senses should never have been able to detect. He could feel the presence of vast fleets moving through space, the awakening of hidden bases and forgotten worlds, the stirring of powers that had slept for centuries. "The other components," he said suddenly, "you said there were 7 total. Where are they being forged?" "Wherever we can find craftsmen with the skill and courage to attempt the work," Lyralii replied. "A Zephyrian crystal singer on Aldebaran Prime, a human metallurgist in the Sol system, a Vorthak stone sculptor in the Centauri cluster, each one working in isolation, each one adding their unique understanding to the greater whole. And when all 7 are complete, then the real work begins," Theron said grimly. "The consortium will not accept defeat easily. They have resources and weapons that even we do not fully understand. And there are other players in this game, powers that have remained hidden even from the Imperium's sight." Marcus thought about his grandfather's teachings, about the importance of understanding not just how to create something, but what that creation might become. The component in his hands was beautiful, a work of art that represented the fusion of 2 ancient traditions. But it was also the opening move in a war that would determine the future of galactic civilization. "What happens next?" he asked. "Next, we take you to meet your fellow conspirators," Lyralii said with a smile that was both beautiful and terrifying. "You have proven that human creativity can unlock powers beyond imagination. Now we must see if human wisdom is equal to the responsibility of using those powers." The draconic ships began to lift from the surface of Kepler. For 38b, their organic hulls flowing like liquid mercury as they prepared to depart. Marcus took one last look at his workshop, at the tools and techniques that had defined his life, and realized that he was about to leave everything he had ever known. But as he stepped aboard Lyreliai's vessel, the components still warm in his hands, he found himself smiling. For the first time in decades, the future was full of infinite possibilities. The interior of Lyreliai's ship defied every assumption Marcus had ever made about spacecraft design. Instead of the sterile corridors and cramped compartments he expected, he found himself walking through spaces that seemed to breathe and pulse with their own life. The walls were composed of the same living silver as the hull, their surfaces flowing in gentle patterns that reminded him of ocean waves. Bioluminescent veins ran along the ceiling, providing soft illumination that somehow adjusted itself to his presence. "Your ship is alive," Marcus observed as they moved through the vessel. "All our ships are alive," Lyreliai replied. "We grew them rather than built them, coaxing them into existence through techniques that blend organic chemistry with quantum manipulation. They're not just vehicles, but partners in our exploration of the galaxy." Marcus ran his hand along one of the walls, surprised by the warmth he felt beneath his palm. The ship's skin responded to his touch, shifting texture and color in what seemed like a gesture of welcome. "How long does it take to grow something like this?" "This particular vessel is approximately 4,000 years old," Theron answered from behind them. "She was one of the first to be created after we developed the bioship protocols. Her name translates roughly to Singer of Star Songs in your language." For 1,000 years, Marcus stopped walking, trying to comprehend the implications. "You've been hiding from the consortium for that long?" "Hiding, preparing, watching, waiting," Lyreliai said. "The consortium has ruled the galaxy for 8 centuries, but their reign has always been built on borrowed time and stolen technology. We knew that eventually the contradictions in their system would create an opportunity for change. We simply did not expect that opportunity to come in the form of human innovation. They emerged into a vast chamber that seemed to exist at the ship's heart. The space was filled with holographic displays showing star charts, fleet movements, and communication intercept from across the galaxy. Other figures moved through the chamber, some humanoid like Lyreliai and Theron, others taking forms that challenged Marcus's understanding of biology. All of them radiated the same aura of ancient power and patient intelligence. "Welcome to the War Room," Lyreliai said. "From here, we coordinate the actions of 17 fleets and monitor the awakening of our sleeping protocols across consortium space." Marcus approached one of the holographic displays, watching in fascination as it showed real-time data from dozens of star systems. Consortium ships were going dark by the thousands as the cascade effects spread through their networks. Trade routes were collapsing, communication grids were failing, and emergency broadcasts were flooding the remaining functional channels. "The consortium's response is predictable," observed a new voice. Marcus turned to see another draconic figure approaching, this one with skin that seemed to be composed of crystalline facets that caught and refracted light in impossible patterns. They're declaring martial law across affected systems and mobilizing their reserve fleets. "Sylphan speaks truth," Theron said grimly. "But their reserve fleets still rely on the same stolen technologies. They will fare no better than the first wave. Unless they have developed countermeasures we are unaware of," Sylphan replied. "The consortium has had 8 centuries to study our technology, to understand its weaknesses. It would be foolish to assume they have learned nothing in that time." Marcus found himself caught up in the strategic discussion despite his lack of experience with galactic warfare. What about the other components? The ones being forged by craftsmen on different worlds? Lyreliai manipulated one of the holographic displays, showing him a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy with 7 points highlighted in pulsing light. 6 of the 7 locations are proceeding as planned. The Zephyrian Crystal Singer has completed her component, and transmitted its resonance signature to our fleet. The Vorthack stone sculptor is nearing completion, though his work has been complicated by consortium interference. And the seventh? The human metallurgist in the Sol system, Theron said heavily. Dr. Sarah Chun, professor of applied metallurgy at the Luna Institute. Also, unless I am mistaken, your granddaughter. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Sarah? She's part of this. She was approached through the same encrypted channels as you, Lyralii explained gently, though I suspect she may not have realized the family connection until now. A new holographic image appeared in the center of the chamber, showing a young woman with Marcus's eyes and her grandmother's stubborn chin. Sarah Chun was working at a forge that looked remarkably similar to Marcus's own, though surrounded by the gleaming technology of one of humanity's most advanced research facilities. She volunteered when she learned what was at stake, Sylphan said, though I fear her situation has become more complicated than we anticipated. The image shifted, showing Sarah's laboratory surrounded by consortium security forces. Unlike the troops that had been stranded on Kepler 438b, these were clearly equipped with older, non-networked equipment that would be immune to the awakening protocols. They're using pre-digital weapons, Marcus observed. Chemical explosives, kinetic rounds, analog control systems. Someone in the consortium has been planning for this scenario. Indeed, Theron said grimly, which suggests that our long concealment may not have been as successful as we believed. There are elements within the consortium hierarchy that know more about us than we have given them credit for. Marcus studied his granddaughter's image, noting the determined expression he remembered from her childhood visits to his workshop. What's her status? She has completed the component, Lyralii reported, but she is trapped within the laboratory. The consortium forces have established a siege perimeter, and they appear to be preparing for a direct assault. Then, we have to help her. With respect, Master Chun, a rescue operation would be extremely dangerous, Sylphan interjected. The Sol system is the heart of consortium military power. They have fortresses on every major world, patrol fleets in every asteroid belt, monitoring stations on every trade route. A draconic fleet entering Sol space would trigger a response that could threaten our entire operation. Then, don't send a draconic fleet, Marcus said, his mind already working through the possibilities. Send a human. The silence that followed his words was profound. Marcus could feel the weight of ancient eyes studying him, calculating probabilities and risks with the patience of beings that had lived for millennia. You are suggesting a solo infiltration mission, Theron said finally, against the most heavily defended system in consortium space. That would be suicide. Would it? Marcus asked. I'm human, born in Sol system. I have documentation, family connections, legitimate reasons to visit Luna Institute. And I have something else they won't expect. He held up the completed component, its surface still glowing with the energy patterns he had forged into its crystalline matrix. A key that can unlock any door, disable any system, turn their own technology against them. The component was not designed for offensive operations, Sylphan protested. Its quantum resonance patterns are calibrated for network infiltration, not direct confrontation. Everything is offensive if you use it correctly, Marcus replied, thinking of his grandfather's lessons about adaptation and improvisation. Besides, you said the components work together, that they amplify each other's effects. If I can get close to Sarah's component, maybe I can create a resonance cascade that will knock out consortium defenses across the entire system. Lyralii moved to stand beside him, her golden eyes reflecting the light of the holographic displays. The risk is enormous. If you're captured, if the component is lost, the entire awakening project could be compromised. If we leave Sarah to die, the project fails anyway, Marcus pointed out. You need all 7 components to complete whatever it is you're planning. And more than that, she's my granddaughter. I won't abandon her to save my own skin. Admirable sentiment, Theron observed. But sentiment alone will not overcome the obstacles you would face. The Sol system is protected by automated defense platforms that have been hardened against electromagnetic interference. The Luna Institute itself is guarded by forces equipped specifically to counter draconic technology. Even reaching the surface would require extraordinary luck. Or extraordinary skill, Marcus said with a slight smile. You keep talking about the consortium's preparations, their countermeasures, their understanding of draconic technology. But how well do they understand human ingenuity? He moved to one of the holographic displays, calling up technical specifications for consortium defense systems. The data streams were in multiple alien languages, but the ship's translation protocols made them readable to his human eyes. Look at these defense platforms, Marcus said, highlighting specific details. Automated targeting systems, quantum encrypted communication protocols, adaptive armor plating. All very impressive against conventional attack patterns. But what happens if someone approaches them with a small, seemingly harmless cargo vessel broadcasting legitimate identification codes? They would scan the vessel for weapons and contraband, Sylphan said. Any attempt to smuggle the component would be detected immediately. Unless the component was disguised as something else, Marcus replied. Something innocuous, something that belongs in the cargo hold of a metallurgy professor's transport. What did you have in mind? Lyralii asked, though Marcus could see from her expression that she was beginning to understand his plan. Raw materials for an academic project. Exotic alloys for student demonstrations. The kind of specialized metals that only someone with my reputation and connections could acquire. Marcus gestured toward the component, its complex surface patterns glittering in the holographic light. With a few modifications to its external structure, this could pass for a sample of crystallized quantum foam, the kind of substance that graduate students might study, but never fully understand. That might actually work, Theron admitted reluctantly. Your reputation in academic circles is well established. A visit to discuss collaborative research with your granddaughter would raise no suspicions. And once I'm inside the Luna Institute, then you would face the same siege conditions as Dr. Chun, Sylphan pointed out. The consortium forces surrounding the facility are not going to allow anyone to leave, regardless of their academic credentials. True, Marcus acknowledged. But they also won't expect an elderly metallurgy professor to be carrying the key to their technological downfall. By the time they realize what's happening, Sarah and I will have activated both components simultaneously, creating a resonance cascade that could disable every piece of consortium technology in the Sol system, Lyralii finished. It is audacious. It is dangerous. And it just might work. The chamber fell silent again as the draconic leaders considered his proposal. Marcus could see calculations flickering behind their ancient eyes, probability matrices being evaluated and discarded as new variables were introduced. There is another factor to consider, Sylphan said finally. Intelligence reports suggest that the consortium has deployed something new to the Sol system. A prototype vessel of unknown capabilities, constructed using technologies that we do not recognize. A new holographic image appeared, showing a ship that seemed to defy conventional design principles. Its hull was composed of interlocking geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, and its engine signatures produced readings that the ship's sensors couldn't properly interpret. What are we looking at? Marcus asked. We are not entirely certain, Theron replied. But we believe it may be a vessel constructed using knowledge obtained from other sources, powers that exist outside the traditional galactic hierarchy. Other sources? The galaxy is vast, Master Chun, and the consortium is not the only force that seeks to shape its development. There are beings that dwell in the spaces between stars, civilizations that exist in dimensions parallel to our own, entities that view the conflicts of flesh and metal as amusing diversions. Lyralii's expression was troubled. If the consortium has made contact with such powers, if they have traded their humanity for weapons beyond our understanding, then the stakes of this conflict are higher than we imagined. Marcus studied the strange ship on the holographic display, noting details that seemed to shift and change even as he watched. Then, we'd better move quickly. How long until I can depart for Sol System? The ship singer of star songs can prepare a human-compatible transport within the hour, Lyralii said. But, Master Chun, once you begin this journey, there will be no turning back. The forces you will set in motion will reshape the galaxy, but they may also destroy everything you hold dear. Everything I hold dear is already at risk, Marcus replied, thinking of Sarah trapped in her laboratory, surrounded by forces that would not hesitate to kill her to maintain their grip on power. At least this way, we have a chance to fight back. He looked around the war room one final time, memorizing the faces of beings that had waited centuries for this moment of opportunity. Then, he turned toward the chamber's exit, the component warm in his hands, ready to begin a journey that would either save galactic civilization or witness its final destruction. Grandfather always said that a smith's greatest responsibility was to understand what his creations might become, Marcus said softly. I guess it's time to find out what I've really been building all these years. The transport ship that emerged from Singer of Star Songs looked like exactly what it was supposed to be. A worn but serviceable academic vessel designed for ferrying research materials and visiting professors between universities. Marcus had helped design the modifications himself, ensuring that every detail from the engine signatures to the cargo manifests would pass even intensive consortium scrutiny. The component now rested in a specially crafted container that disguised its true nature while preserving its essential properties. To any scanner, it would appear to be a sample of exotic crystalline materials suitable for graduate-level metallurgy studies. Only someone who knew exactly what to look for would recognize the quantum resonance patterns hidden beneath its mundane exterior. Your documentation has been uploaded to consortium academic databases, Theron reported as Marcus made his final preparations. Professor Marcus Chun, Emeritus Faculty of Applied Metallurgy, University of New Geneva. Visiting Sol System for collaborative research with Dr. Sarah Chun, Luna Institute. All records show proper authorization for transport of specialized materials. And the siege situation at Luna Institute. Unchanged, Lyralii replied grimly. Consortium forces maintain their perimeter, though they have not yet attempted a direct assault. Intelligence suggests they are waiting for reinforcements from the mysterious vessel we detected. Marcus checked his personal belongings one final time, ensuring that nothing would betray his true mission. The clothes were appropriately academic. The research notes, genuine examples of metallurgy theory. The personal items carefully selected to reinforce his cover identity. He looked like exactly what he claimed to be, an elderly professor visiting his granddaughter. Remember, Silthan said as Marcus prepared to board the transport, the moment you activate the component, every piece of consortium technology in the Sol System will begin to fail. You will have perhaps minutes before they realize what is happening and respond accordingly. What kind of response are we talking about? Unknown, Theron admitted. But, given the presence of that alien vessel, we must assume they have contingencies that do not rely on their standard technological base. Marcus nodded, understanding the implications. He was walking into a situation where the rules could change without warning, where assumptions about cause and effect might prove fatally incorrect. It was, he reflected, not unlike the early days of human space exploration, when every mission carried the risk of encountering something completely outside their experience. If things go wrong, he said to Lyralii, if I don't make it out, promise me you'll continue the Awakening project. Don't let the consortium lock the galaxy into stagnation just because one old smith made a mistake. You will not fail, Lyralii replied with conviction that seemed to echo from the depths of space itself. Human adaptability has survived every challenge this galaxy has presented. Trust in that heritage, Master Chun. Trust in the fire that has burned in your people's hearts since they first reached for the stars. The transport ship sealed itself around Marcus, its automated systems coming online with the soft hum of perfectly maintained equipment. The AI pilot was a simple but effective program, designed to follow flight plans without the kind of advanced consciousness that might attract unwanted attention. Transport vessel Academic Pride requesting departure clearance. The AI announced through the ship's communication system. Clearance granted, came the reply from singer of star songs. Safe travels, Professor Chun. May your research prove enlightening. As the transport ship separated from the draconic vessel, Marcus felt a moment of profound isolation. For the past several days, he had been surrounded by beings of immense power and ancient wisdom, participants in plans that spanned centuries. Now he was alone in a small ship, carrying the hopes of multiple civilizations in a disguised container no larger than his forearm. The journey to Sol System took 18 hours, long enough for Marcus to review every detail of his plan and consider all the things that could go wrong. The transport's passenger compartment was Spartanly functional, designed for academics who cared more about reaching their destination than traveling in comfort. He used the time to study the technical specifications of Luna Institute, memorizing floor plans and security protocols that might prove useful. When they finally dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Sol System, Marcus was struck by how normal everything looked. Earth hung in space like a blue jewel, unchanged by the cosmic forces that were reshaping galactic civilization. The moon showed the gleaming domes and towers of humanity's first extraterrestrial cities, while the orbital platforms and asteroid mining facilities continued their ancient routines. "This is Sol System Traffic Control," came a voice over the communication channels. "Transport Vessel Academic Pride, please transmit identification and purpose of visit." Academic Pride transmitting, the AI replied smoothly. "Passenger, Professor Marcus Chun, University of New Geneva. Destination, Luna Institute for Collaborative Research. All documentation attached. Stand by for verification." Marcus held his breath as consortium computers analyzed his fabricated credentials. The documentation was perfect, created by beings who understood information systems better than their original designers. But there was always the possibility that something had been overlooked, some detail that would trigger suspicion. Academic Pride, you are cleared for approach to Luna Station. Please maintain Vector 3.7.2 and submit to standard cargo inspection upon arrival. Ignalith, Sol Control. As the transport ship adjusted its course toward the moon, Marcus caught sight of something that made his blood run cold. Hanging in space between Earth and Luna, surrounded by a constellation of consortium escort vessels, was the mysterious ship that Sylphan had shown him in the war room. Up close, it was even more disturbing than the holographic images had suggested. The vessel seemed to exist in a state of constant flux, its hull patterns shifting between configurations that hurt to perceive directly. It was clearly artificial, but constructed according to principles that had nothing to do with any known engineering tradition. Looking at it made Marcus feel as though he were staring into an optical illusion that was staring back. "Impressive, is it not?" Came a new voice over the communication channel, one that carried undertones of authority and barely concealed malice. "The first fruit of a new alliance, Professor Chun. A demonstration that the consortium has resources beyond anything the galaxy has previously imagined." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. The speaker knew who he was, which meant his cover had already been blown. But how? The documentation was perfect, the ship legitimate, his story carefully constructed to withstand scrutiny. "I'm sorry, but I think you have me confused with someone else," Marcus replied, fighting to keep his voice steady. "I'm here for academic research, nothing more." "Oh, but you are so much more than that, Master Chun. You are the artisan who forged the first key, the spark that ignited the awakening fires across 17 star systems. Did you truly believe we would not recognize your handiwork?" The alien ship began to move, its impossible geometry shifting as it altered course to intercept the Academic Pride. Marcus could see energy patterns building along its hull, preparations for some kind of attack or capture operation. However, the voice continued, "We are not without appreciation for your skills. The being that speaks to you now has studied your work with great interest. Such artistry, such intuitive understanding of quantum metallurgy, deserves a more worthy patron than the failing Imperium. "Who are you?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. "I am what the Consortium has become in order to survive the changing galaxy. I am adaptation beyond the limitations of flesh, evolution beyond the constraints of mortality. I am the future that awaits all sufficiently advanced civilizations." The alien ship was close enough now that Marcus could see details of its construction that defied rational explanation. The hull seemed to be composed of folded space itself, geometries that existed in more dimensions than human perception could process. Whatever had built this vessel operated according to principles that had nothing to do with the physical laws that govern conventional technology. "The component you carry," the voice said, and Marcus realized with growing dread that whatever was speaking to him had capabilities that far exceeded normal sensor technology. "It resonates with frequencies that echo across multiple dimensional planes. Crude, but effective like all human innovations. We would be most interested in studying it. You'll have to come and take it," Marcus said grimly. "That can certainly be arranged." The alien ship extended something that might have been a tractor beam, though it operated by pulling on gravitational fields rather than electromagnetic force. The academic pride shuddered as irresistible forces began to draw it toward the impossible vessel. But Marcus had not spent 60 years as a smith without learning something about force and resistance. He moved to the transport's cargo bay, where the disguised component waited in its protective container. With swift, sure movements, he began to modify the container's configuration, changing it from a passive storage device to something far more active. "What are you doing, Master Chun?" the voice asked, and for the first time Marcus detected a note of concern. "Something my grandfather taught me," Marcus replied as he worked. "When you can't overcome a force, you redirect it." The component's quantum resonance patterns were designed to interact with the technological systems of the galaxy's various civilizations. But Marcus was beginning to understand that the same principles might apply to more exotic forms of engineering. If the alien ship was constructed using folded space and dimensional manipulation, then perhaps it was vulnerable to the same kind of awakening protocols that had disabled Consortium technology. He activated the component's full resonance spectrum, bypassing the safeguards that normally limited its output. Energy poured through its crystalline matrix, creating interference patterns that rippled outward through dimensions that human science had no names for. The effect was immediate and devastating. The alien ship's tractor beam faltered as its exotic systems encountered forces they were not designed to handle. The folded space of its hull began to unfold, revealing glimpses of technologies that seemed to exist in multiple realities simultaneously. "Impossible," the voice said, though it now carried harmonics that suggested genuine alarm. "The component should not be capable of affecting our dimensional architecture." "You underestimate human stubbornness," Marcus replied as he continued to modify the resonance patterns. "We don't give up just because something should be impossible." The alien ship was beginning to destabilize, its impossible geometries collapsing into configurations that violated the basic principles of physics. But Marcus knew that his victory would be temporary at best. The component was burning out under the strain of full activation, its crystalline matrix developing stress fractures that would soon render it useless. He had perhaps minutes before the makeshift weapon failed completely. More than enough time to reach Luna Institute, but not enough to complete the mission that had brought him to Sol System. Unless he could reach Sarah and her component in time to create the resonance cascade that would disable all Consortium technology in the system. The academic pride broke free of the failing tractor beam and accelerated toward Luna Station, its automated pilot following the original flight plan despite the chaos erupting around them. Behind them, the alien ship continued to collapse into increasingly improbable configurations, reality bending and twisting as dimensional barriers failed. "This is Luna Station Traffic Control," came an urgent voice over the communication channels. All approaching vessels are ordered to maintain safe distance. We are experiencing some kind of spatial anomaly. Academic Pride requests emergency landing clearance. Marcus responded, not bothering to maintain his cover identity any longer. I have critical cargo that needs immediate delivery to Dr. Sarah Chun. Negative, Academic Pride. Luna Station is under security lockdown. No será isto por ser permitido. Then, you'd better authorize me quickly, Marcus said grimly, because that spatial anomaly is about to get a lot worse. He could see Luna Station growing larger through the transport's viewports, its gleaming domes and research towers representing the pinnacle of human scientific achievement. Somewhere inside those structures, Sarah was waiting with the second component, unaware that the fate of galactic civilization might depend on whether her grandfather could reach her in time. The Academic Pride touched down at Luna Station's primary docking facility just as the component's resonance patterns reached critical instability. Marcus grabbed the container and ran for the airlock, knowing that he had perhaps minutes before the quantum matrix collapsed entirely. The station's corridors were in chaos, with emergency alarms blaring and security forces rushing to respond to reports of the spatial anomaly. Marcus pushed through the crowds of confused civilians and panicked officials, following memorized directions toward the metallurgy research complex where Sarah was trapped. He reached the laboratory building to find it surrounded by consortium soldiers using the same pre-digital equipment he had seen in the holographic displays. Chemical explosive charges had been placed around the entrances, and kinetic projectile weapons were trained on every possible exit point. "That's far enough, Professor," called out one of the soldiers, a woman with the insignia of a consortium security colonel. "You're under arrest for conspiracy against galactic peace." "I'm here to see my granddaughter," Marcus replied calmly, though his heart was racing with the awareness that the component in his hands was on the verge of catastrophic failure. Dr. Chun is no longer receiving visitors. "Then, I'll have to insist." Marcus activated the component's emergency resonance mode, releasing the last of its stored energy in a single, overwhelming pulse. Every piece of electronic equipment within 100 meters simply stopped working, leaving the consortium soldiers with weapons that were suddenly no more dangerous than expensive clubs. The laboratory building's security doors, no longer held closed by magnetic locks, swung open to reveal Sarah Chun standing in the entrance. She was holding an identical container to Marcus's, and her eyes were bright with the same fire of creation that had driven their family for generations. "Hello, grandfather," she said with a smile. "I was wondering when you'd get here." "Hello, Sarah. I believe you have something that belongs with this." They opened their containers simultaneously, revealing the two components in all their crystalline glory. As the quantum resonance patterns merged and amplified each other, a wave of energy spread outward from Luna Station, racing through space at velocities that exceeded the speed of light itself. Across the Sol system, every piece of consortium technology began to fail in perfect synchronization. Defense platforms went dark, patrol ships drifted powerless through the void, and communication networks fell silent as the awakening protocol spread through every connected system. But more than that, the resonance cascade reached beyond the boundaries of normal space, touching the networks that connected Sol system to the rest of the galaxy. From Earth to the outer rim, from the core worlds to the frontier colonies, the technological foundations of consortium rule began to crumble. "Well," Sarah said as they watched the lights of Luna Station flicker and die around them, "I guess that's that." "No," Marcus replied, looking up at the stars that seemed somehow brighter now that the galaxy was free to find its own path forward. "I think this is just the beginning." In the silence that followed the collapse of the old order, Marcus could hear something that had been missing from the galaxy for 8 centuries. The sound of infinite possibilities stirring to life, ready to be shaped by beings who remembered how to dream of better tomorrows. The age of enforced uniformity was over. The age of conscious evolution had begun. And somewhere in the space between the stars, Lyralii smiled as the awakening signals reached fleets that had waited lifetimes for this moment, carrying with them the promise that the galaxy would never again mistake stagnation for peace.